Hey everybody, welcome to Trading Capital's exclusive analysis. In today's video, we're going to be just discussing some of the potential trade setups that I like. So starting off with the long side, I'm really liking Square. Square has actually been bludgeoned right now. And overall, you can see Square is trading pretty much into some pretty big technical support areas, almost retracing to your COVID lows. It's tagging this major support pivot, this consolidation range back in 2018, and this major pivot in 2017. So there should be some pretty overall decent support in this area. Not only is Square getting extremely into some heavy technical support, it's getting deeply oversold on the daily RSI. I mean, simply going back on the RSI, take a look when Square last traded down at these levels on the RSI. We're talking about a 22 on the RSI. Last time it traded down here was really in January of 2022 when it had this ferocious sell-off, back here in basically January of 2022. Then you had a little bit of a pop on Square, which basically led to a little bit of a 30% rally from the low, so a $30 move. And we're actually trading at a lower point on the chart. And overall, I think that Square could be one of those ones that has a retrace, specifically if we start to see, some of the crypto markets, more speculative money. It's going to need a market bounce, specifically around the QQQs and the S&P. But this is the levels that you really start to need to take stabs at. Overall, where do I think we could get a retrace to? I think we could get a retrace to this gap fill around 57.50, or simply retracing back to this trend line. That would mean from the lows, we could expect at least about a 19 to 20% pop off of the low. So I am liking this one on the long side. Even if you throw on the monthly chart, this is where things get really interesting. Obviously on the monthly chart, this is looking bad because it's broken this upsloping trend line. So obviously that is bearish, but inside bearish moves, you can also have bullish moves. So the overall monthly chart is interesting because although you made a new low, look at the RSI. You have this positive divergence on the monthly time frame of the RSI where you're making a little bit of an uptrend, but now you're making somewhat of a downtrend in the overall price action. So the last time the RSI was this low, Square made a low basically around this 55. You're now making a series of higher highs on the RSI, but you're making a series of lower lows on the price action. So I do like Square on the long side. Another one, cent level. Obviously, Enphase was my number one long trade with my members not too long ago after we had some insider buying occurring. I do hold Enphase long. I trim some, but overall Enphase is one that should be set to move higher on the long side. I do like natural gas. I am holding natural gas as a long trade. Overall, it did get hit pretty hard today, but you can see that you're still inside of this major resistance zone. Right now, this is resistance, but it's also acting as support. The low boundary range is your support. The high end of the range is your resistance. Natural gas gap down, so I do anticipate that eventually this is a little bit of a shakeout that's going to break through this stage 1 basing formation and likely send nat gas up to this $4.38 mark. So we'll have to wait and see and really pay attention to natural gas. On that note, there's a few individual stocks that are really at some key critical levels, like some bellwether names. Nvidia, take a look at this trend line. Nvidia is once again hammering on this key upsloping trend line. If it breaks this, you could see a move down to this gap fill around 396 and then ultimately even testing the gap window at 366. Now, if you throw on the weekly chart, what support is Nvidia hitting alongside with this trend line? Well, simply throw on the 20-week moving average. Look what Nvidia is hammering on right now. I do think that Nvidia is more prone to getting a bounce off of this level. Don't know how high. I'm not going to say how high. The big resistance is going to be around 443. That would be roughly a $13 move on Nvidia, and then you'll have to reassess on the weekly and daily time frames. Ultimately, I do think Nvidia will eventually somewhat fill this, especially if the markets start to fall precipitously lower, but I'm not sold that the markets are breaking down yet. Although you have some pretty negative price action on the Qs today, it really wasn't that extreme of a volume sell-off, specifically taking into account the FOMC rate hike decision. And what I'm really looking at here is this support level that you're actually hammering on. Major pivot, major pivot. Look what you just hammered on today. Throw up the QQQ. Look what the Qs are also hammering on the weekly 20 moving average. So be mindful. Don't be piling on the short side, because if this turns out to be an inverse head and shoulders pattern on the Qs, this still shows some significant upside. Now, Tesla's getting a little bit more interesting as well on the long side. Let me just erase some of these trend lines here just to clean up this chart so we can make it easier. And bear with me while I clean up this chart. Tesla had a pretty sharp reversal today. You can see it traded all the way up to 273.93 and reversed higher. So Tesla was one of those stocks that is potentially putting in this inverse head and shoulders pattern. Right now it's on a near-term watch for a technical breakdown. It's still holding its uptrend, so you have to give it the benefit of the doubt. It has not broken its technical uptrend, but if you get a daily close below this key trend line, as you can see, you're hovering right on that trend line right now. One would argue that you're basically maybe got to close below it today, depending on how you draw your trend line. But needless to say, you're still holding this wick low over here, and you're still holding this inside green bar. So this is all technically inside bullish consolidation until it otherwise gives you that definitive. So what I'm showing you on my screen here is the heat map of the S&P 500. On a daily chart, a lot of stocks sold off. Obviously, you saw some strength in the health services. A couple of the consumer non-durables held up as well, and health technology. But overall, electronic technology services was the big sector that got hit the hardest. Let's take a look on the weekly chart. You can see the mega caps have been under pressure, the likes of Microsoft, Nvidia, Eli Lilly, Amazon, Home Depot, Tesla, XOM on the weekly chart have definitely been selling off. So on a weekly chart, a lot of these names have fallen a decent amount. Then you go to the monthly chart. The monthly chart, the market is still overall holding up significantly well. Other than Nvidia, Oracle, obviously the big drop on earnings, and some other individual names, there's still a lot of strength in this market. So it's kind of mixed right now. You do not have a complete bearish reversal. A lot of people are hopping on the bearish train, piling on the puts and the shorts, but you have to really be careful at this inflection point in the overall market. On that note, I'm going to end this video here. Please give this video a big like down below. Definitely stay tuned for some of our additional insights and trading opportunities. If you're wanting to know more, definitely look at our website at tradingcapital.ca, where we have a whole host of positions, updates, and daily analysis videos for our members, and a live